G'day everyone, Tim here from vMix, and this is a really quick start guide on how to use vMix GT. So for those that don't know, vMix GT is a new title designer that will be in vMix 22 to replace the old title designer. It's still accessible here, you can still use the title designer to build them here, that's no problem, but you'll also see now that we have a GT title designer, which is kind of funny. It's the graphics title designer, so we just call it GT for short. Now it's a basic title designer, it's not out to replace these thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment and software that create awesome CG titles. This is a basic title designer for people that want to create lower thirds and different scoreboards and that type of thing. Now vMix GT will be available in all versions of vMix. However, if you want to animate them or bring in Photoshop files, you will need vMix 4K and vMix Pro. However, there are a lot of new animated templates in vMix, so you'll be able to use, I think currently there's 70, but they're probably going to be more in the future, so 70 different animated titles that now come as a part of all versions of vMix. And you'll also be able to use vMix GT to create new smooth tickers and right to left and that kind of thing. So the ticker has been fairly well updated. Okay, so you may be asking, well, how do I use vMix 22 beta, Tim? Well, if you purchase vMix after January 2018, you'll be able to update the beta and try it out for free. However, if you purchase vMix prior to 2018, we've decided to actually enforce our update fee, which is $60, which we haven't really done in the past. So yeah, if you want to try it out, you'll need to update $60, or if you haven't abused our trial system in the past, then you should be able to use the vMix trial if you want to use the vMix 22 beta. Alternatively, if you upgrade your edition, so say if you go from HD to 4K, you get an additional 12 months worth of updates if you want to do it that way. So this is vMix GT right here. As you can see, it's a basic title designer. It might look similar to various Microsoft products that you've used, a similar sort of menu up the top here, so you might be familiar with it in a little way or so. Alright, so up the top here we have a basic menu file. That'll have, your basic stuff like new, open, save as, all your history of files you've created, importing PSDs and export PNGs if you've got those capabilities. And then across the top we've got home, styles, format, effects, animations, data. And those have different submenu areas like you can see here. On the left, this is where you create things, so you can use the mouse to move around, text, rectangle, circle, triangle, right angle triangle, image, text 3D, and ticker. In the main section here is the canvas, so that's your main starting point. On the right here you've got your layers, so we'll be able to see that in a little bit more effect later on. And down the bottom right hand corner, things like the safe areas, you can turn that on and off, you can turn the align locking on and off, and you can zoom as well. So you can zoom in, zoom out, fit to window, and that type of thing. Okay, so let's create a basic lower third. So I'm just going to go to the rectangle section here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle just by using my left mouse click and creating the rectangle. Now I can actually use the alignment lines here. So the green line will be an alignment line for the midpoint, and let's drag that to the center. So there we go. So that's the midpoint. That's a canvas, like a global midpoint. Now I can right click and then use alignment here, so I can align a bottom, can center it, that type of thing. I can dock it, so I can dock it to the bottom, and use various different things on this particular right click menu. So I'm going to just go back to where I was, and I'm just going to move this up a bit. It's kind of keeping it aligned with the safe zone. So it's still in the center, but it's within the safe zone. So that's my rectangle. I can move it around, I can click this and spin it around into different locations if I want to. I can undo that. Now if I wanted a specific size rectangle, I could also go to the format menu here and adjust the location and the rotation. Let's just say I wanted to adjust the height to 200. I could drag that along there, or I can double click that, change it, hit enter. Same with the width. Let's just say I want this to be 1300 exactly, enter that, and so now I've got the image, and I can align it again to make sure that it's aligned in the center. So I am good to go. Alright, so let's make some changes to the rectangle. So if I go back to the home menu here, I can change the color fill, so I can change it to, let's just say, a white rectangle if I wanted to. I could also make it gradient. So by default the gradient will select the first color here, so that's the white color, and then it will have an alpha color at the end. So if I applied that, that's the kind of basic gradient. It'll go from color down to transparent. So let's say we want the bottom color to be like a gray. Just go for a light gray here. If I apply that, that's going to be what it looks like. And it looks pretty cool. And I can actually go back here and adjust the second point alpha as well. So I want to make that a little bit transparent. I can do that and apply it. Now if I wanted to change the gradient, I can click the add stop, which will add different layers here. So at 0.2, 0.3, and then I can move these along if I need to. So I'm just going to remove these like so. I can also change the angle of it. I can make it radial as well, change the wrap. So that's how you create a gradient. Now you can also see that I can create a fill as well, so like a texture fill. I can select something here. I can choose my own image that I want to fill the content with of my particular shape. Now next to that you'll see stroke. So stroke refers to essentially a border. So that will create a inner stroke around the item. So what you want to do is select your color. Let's go with black. Thickness, you need to make sure that you select the thickness, because if it's 0, there is no stroke there. And then I can choose the style, which is typically probably going to be solid. So as you can see now, I've got a width of 4 around that particular rectangle. So I can also create a gradient as well if I wanted to with that particular border. So yeah, keep in mind that's an inner stroke, not an outer stroke. So if you've got a 4 pixel stroke around that, then technically the content on the inside is going to be 4 pixels inside of what it was. So just keep that in mind. Something to think about. All right, so that is my rectangle created. Now, if I go along here, I can choose a style. So we have some pre-configured styles if I wanted to actually use this instead of what I had. So if I select that, that's what it'll do. So I'm just going to undo that. It's different things like so, if you wanted to quickly do that. And then format. So that was with the location, dimension. Now you see here radius. So if I set a radius to the X, just enter it, double click, enter, that will create a rounded rectangle. So now you can see I've got a rounded rectangle here. And various other things. The plane I can probably talk to you a little bit about later on, perhaps, how to create 3D shapes like a cube and that type of thing. So I'm just going to reset that radius back to a square. Now here's the effect, so I can change the opacity of the entire shape like there. I can create a very basic shadow. Now keep in mind you can't change the size here. This is a very basic shadow system, very basic reflection system as well. Now you'll see the skew here, so I can create a skewed rectangle like so, and then move it around as well if I wanted to, like so. Reset these. Again, the texture flip is if I created an image or a texture within that, I could flip that horizontal or vertical. That's not actually going to flip the image, just the texture fill of it. I can create masks, so if I had a separate box here, so create another rectangle like here, and I created a mask for it. If I select rectangle 1, which is my base rectangle, I can select rectangle 2 as the mask. If I drag this down, you can only see it in that mask area. Probably best if you play around with that a little bit yourself to work out how those masks work. I won't go into too much more detail about masking. And various other things like cropping here. So if I wanted to skew something, I wanted to make this, but I wanted to then crop it at the end, I can do it like so. And then by default, it's got a feather, so I can make that a hard cut there. Now you notice that the border didn't translate. That's because the border is for the original image. Because you've cropped it, the border can't be applied to it. So keep that in mind if you're looking to skew and then crop different images. You may need to set another image rectangle behind it, duplicate it and set it that way. Or usually if you're cropping it like this, you'll be setting it behind another layer. So it's kind of cover it and then shoot out from one point or another. But that's something that you can play around with in regards to the crop and the feather. I'm just going to get this back to normal. And so that's basically how you manipulate a rectangle. All right, so let's get back to the start here and let's just go and create some text. So selected the text box and then created the text box here. So you notice that here we've got text box 1, we've got rectangle 1. I can change these, so I'm just going to make this lower rectangle. And then text box. So vMix will pick up the fact that this is a text box and it will allow me to edit the text when I go to the title editor. All right, so we can change the font. As you can see here, if I go down here, I can change the font. Now underneath this, you'll see italics and underline. Now bold is in this menu here because it refers to the weight of the font. So like a lot of different fonts have all these crazy different weights. Bold is listed as one of those. So if you want to bold something, you'll need to go to that font menu. Let's make the size a whole lot bigger. And then I can choose how this text relates to the text field. So see the text box is, you know, a certain size. I want to set the text within that. So I want to center it, or I could set it to a midpoint as well. So I can put this right down the bottom of the field, in the middle, and that type of thing. So typically you want to go center and mid, which is what I've got set up here. Now, I can also go to wrapping, so I can choose to whether I want to enable or disable word wrapping, and also a fixed area for the text. So if I set this to shrink, if my text fills up the entire box, the text will automatically shrink to the size of the box, so that it will lower the font so you don't have to worry about that. I know that my text is only going to be this large, so I'm going to leave that as fixed. Again, we can change the color of it for the text, like I mentioned before. We could add a border to it if we wanted to, and that type of thing. So now I've got my text ready to go. Now, because I've only got one element, you know, one layer, which is the canvas here, I can just right click and I can align this center because everything is going to be centered. So it's only on the one particular level. So I've got one layer and it's the entire canvas size. So let's just say, let's just move this a little bit wonky like so. So that's not quite centered, but I also want to have my rectangle on the side. So I'm going to press Control, I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to move this to the side here. This is where I want it. But now I'm like, ah, no, my text is not centered within that, with the rectangle. So what I can do is I can hit Control and select both of them, and then right click and create a group layer. So now the group layer is going to be created at the largest element on that particular selected group. So as you can see now, this layer is only the size of this rectangle. So if I click the text now, when I align it, I can actually align it in the center of that particular layer. So it's no longer centering as the global layer, or the first layer that I had set up, the canvas. It's centering it within this particular layer. Now the layers are important because you can do separate animations and separate elements on different layers and then move them, align them, and adjust them accordingly. So that becomes pretty handy down the track when things get a little bit more involved. Okay, so now we have a basic title template here. I can go ahead and I can save this. Just call this lower 3. And as you can see, we'll save it as a GT zip here. Okay, so now we save the title. Now I've jumped across to vMix, as you can see here, and I'm going to add the title. So I'm going to go to Add Input, and then I'm going to go to the title section. Now you'll see all of these new GT titles that are available in all versions of vMix. All of these are animated. So it goes everything from the classic, you might remember, the classic blue, the classic green, to different versions, all sorts of things, down to crazy sort of ones that pop out and do all sorts of stuff. Like this one here. If I use this one, you can see it'll slide in from both sides and slide out and slide back in, all that kind of stuff. So all of those are now available in vMix. As I said, maybe not on this take of the video, but if we get some cool ideas, we can add some more templates. There's 70 different templates that are currently available across the tickers, scoreboards, GT social, and all that kind of stuff as well. So those are different things that are available. So if I want to add my current one that I just created, I can go to this one, click Open, OK, and you'll see it here. So I can just edit the text. And I am good to go and start using my new GT title. That's it there. All right, so let's get back to the title designer. All right, so now we've got our title here. So if I want to get this back center, I can actually use the alignment on the layer as well, so the overall layer. So I'm going to go align center like this, and I'm just going to bring this back down to the section down the bottom. Just double check that that's aligned. Now it can be a little bit finicky, I won't lie, to get everything aligned and using the locking and that type of thing. You may need to do it a little bit manually, like selecting it and using the up, down, right, left key to move them along and that sort of thing. So yeah, apologies if it's a little bit hard to use the alignment, but it's pretty hard to do, unfortunately. All right, so let's animate this thing that we've got going on. Now, let's go to the animation section. So currently we've got this layer here. We have a base layer that's not doing anything, but we have this particular layer here. Now I can choose to animate the entire layer if I want to. So I can select layer 3, and then I can select a transition in. So you'll see on the left hand here, we'll have transition in, transition out. Pages are based on like different data sources and that type of thing. And then continuous. So if you want to have the spinning cube, data change in, data change out. So that's for like vMix Social. When you get a piece of data that's changing, you can change all these different elements based on that. And then data change in and out based on a text field. So if I selected a data change in out for this particular piece of text, when I change this text here, I can make it do other animations, which is handy for things like scoreboards. So if you actually have a look in the, I think it's the VBA scoreboard in vMix. Let's quickly load that up. Scoreboards VBA. So you'll notice in here, let me just throw this up, that when I make a change here to the, where is it, home score, if I change this is obviously live, so it's not going to look great, but if I change that to 1, see it fade out and fade back in again? So that's what a data change in on that particular text field does. So yeah, okay, yeah, so what I basically want to do is use one of these animations. I can use it on the whole layer. So I can use things like a bounce, which will bounce it in from the side, a reveal. So for example, a reveal looks like this. Start from finish, it'll reveal it across. These are different things you can play around with to see which one you're going to like and work out. On the right hand side here, you can use this for transition in, out. This one to play that particular transition, whether it's in, out, or pages and that type of thing. You can also hit the home button to go play transition in and out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select fly. So this is for the entire layer. So the entire layer will move in from the side. Now I can set a delay to that. So when I begin the transition in for the title, I can delay it. I can change the duration. So as you can see, I can make this 0.3 of a second. These are all in seconds. So when I play this out now, it goes in a whole lot quicker. So I'm going to set this back to, there's some are set here, but you can just type them in. The style here, I can do cubic easing in, out, bounce in, bounce out. So linear is a single speed. Like cubic easing in will move in quicker, then slow down. Out will move slow and then quicker. So here's easing in, quick, slow. Easing out is slow, quick. And then in, out is both ways. So fast, slow, fast, slow. And so yeah, that is what, I believe that's what it is. Yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry, I've been talking a lot today. Anyway, so that is how to animate the entire layer. So I've got it coming in from there, and then I need to choose what I want to do moving out. Now, on each animation, you can have 3 different animations if you wanted to. So if we select layer 2, I can also choose to fade this in. So I can do like a really crazy slow fade if I wanted to. So when I play this in and out, you'll see it barely come in, and then it's slowly fading up. So yeah, that's different things you can add to the transition in. So if you don't want to use that, you just go back to none, and you'll notice that the color changes. So this is to keep you an idea. As someone that made a few templates in my time, it was really annoying if you accidentally had something on the 3rd layer that you didn't know that it was there. So green indicates that there is a transition on that particular 1, 2, or 3. Now, if you, like me, had multiple layers and all sorts of stuff happening with transitions, you can click this here and it will tell you what's got a transition on it. So that's super handy if you've got 17 transitions on a particular title. That will tell you where they all are. Okay, so now I want to transition this out. So I can do a completely different kind. So one of my favorites is the reveal. So let's make this a little bit quicker. And I can make it centered reveal. So I can set the axis to X, which means it's going to close in the middle, like a door. So again, I can change this. I could set it to a different axis if I wanted to. I can do reveals from different sides. like so. And yeah, that's basically, you can play around with these and work out how all they work. There's a lot of different things to do and changes and that sort of thing for it. Now, there are a couple of other things to consider. So this was me doing the overall layer. So an overall layer can have a transition in and out. So when you're working with these, make sure that you are actually working on the transition that you want. Sometimes you do a whole bunch of transitions in and then you forget that you need to set a transition out. So make sure that you use the drop-down menu to choose the exact transition you're working on. Now I can also do transitions within a layer. So I can set all the separate elements to have their own transition in. So say I've got this to come like flying in for the text. You'll notice that will fly in from the layer. It's not actually flying in from the overall canvas because it's set within this layer. Same with this here. So the lower rectangle, you can see if I fly it in, which is moving in from the side, you'll notice it's only coming in from within the layer, not from the overall canvas, because that's layer 1. Layer 1 is the overall. And I can even remove this, but that's just to let you know that if you've got elements within a layer, that it's going to be actually revealing or coming in from that particular area. So keep that in mind when playing around with these different elements. What else do I need to cover? So that's kind of your basic animations and that sort of thing. I think that kind of about covers most things. If you want to get really tricky, let's say I wanted to add an image. I'm just going to add vMix cube image. Click OK. Now, because you see that I've added this to a particular layer, it's only being able to be visible in this layer. And I'm like, oh no, what do I do? So I can always create a new layer by clicking the plus button, and that's going to create a canvas size layer. Again, like I mentioned before, if I select multiple elements and then create a layer from that, it's only going to create the layer to the size of the largest element. If I go up here and I click plus, it's going to create a layer that is the overall size of this canvas here. So what I can then do is go from the image that I selected, and then I can drag that up into the layer, and it's going to appear full size as I want it. Now, if I want to change the size of this, I can change this around and bring this to here. And so this is now my cube that I have, my image that I created. So I can right click on that and I can browse, and I can choose a different image if I wanted to. Now there's one thing that we did set up, and I was kind of showing on our other show, on our monthly show, is the ability to do things like this. Let me find out where it is. So I can set the geometry for this to be a cube. So it's now seen as a cube, and then I can add depth to it. So I know that I can set, I don't know, let's go with 200 here. I don't want to make this 200 negative, so let me just get rid of this. So if I make this 200 all the way around, so that's 200 now all the way around. So even though it's showing one face, it's now a cube because I've selected the geometry as a cube. So if I go into the animation sections now and I select continuous, I'm able to actually continuously move this by selecting rotate. So I can slow this down a bit, which is probably a good idea, like so, and I can change the point in which it spins if I wanted to make it super cool. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, and you can have moving around, and you can set as different elements in here. So that's a continuous motion. Now if you wanted to add a image sequence, what you need to do is you can add the image, and then you can set it as an image sequence in the animations section. So let me try and find where that image is, and I will attempt to show you. Just 1 minute. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to add a, what's her name? An image sequence. So I'm going to select the first image. So I've got a PNG file here, and here I am. I didn't really render this all that well, but let's just put me here. So what I need to do now is go to, say, my transition in, and I can set it as an image sequence. And I can play this out So this is what I'm going to look like. So that's how you can add an image sequence to it. You can add the image and then you can select it as an image sequence and play it out. So I can obviously slow that down a bit. Actually, that's speeding it up. So yeah, that's how you can add an image sequence. Again, there's a whole lot more depth that you can add to it. And then, you can set different times where this comes out and does different things. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind if you want to use image sequences. And it's probably, like I said, it's probably an idea just to play around with it and see how you go. All right, before I go, I need to show you how to set up a ticker. So basically I select a ticker and then I drag it and that creates the ticker. So again, same with the text, you can set it to mid, you can set it to center and that type of thing. If you go to the effects, if we go to the format section, the type is replace or add. If you've got a data source where you're wanting to add, you need to select that there, but it's typically going to be replace. You can choose the direction in which it goes and you can set the speed for it as well. So ideally what you would do is create a thing like that behind it. Obviously you can move these, and I didn't show you this, but you can set this, as you drag them along, it will set them to different elements. If you wanted to set that, say, to a particular rectangle like so, you can align it using that. So yeah, that's how you set up a ticker. And then you can make changes to it, change the text, all that kind of stuff can be done in here. Okay, if you double click on it as well, hang on a sec, let's just double click on that. You can add the text input there for the text that you want for the ticker and that type of thing. All right, so I think that's about it. I'm not entirely sure. There could be a whole bunch of other stuff that I've completely forgotten. So yeah, if you want to delete elements, you can just select it. If you want to delete a layer, it'll ask you if you want to delete it, that type of thing. Like I can still technically delete this lower layer. It doesn't really matter. Everything else is still here. Okay, so I think that is about it when it comes to the GT. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I didn't cover, but those are kind of the basics. Well, like I said, with a lot of these things that we've already created, there's a lot of different things that are in play here. So like this is the classic. So we've got a couple of different layers, different animations that are happening on each layer at different times. So like there's a delay here where that particular group is coming in, and then a shorter delay on the top one. So you can kind of set all those different elements to different times, different layers, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of GT. Remember, it is a basic title designer, so play around with it, see what you can do. If there's any bugs, please report them in the forum. And if you have any ideas on things that need to be fixed, let us know in the forums, and we will take a look at them. So that was it. Thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll see you around.